Blog Talk Radio.
The Axis of Stevil Show.
Are you pondering what I'm pondering?
TheAxisOfStevil.com presents The Axis of Stevil Show.
We're going to South Carolina, and Oklahoma, and Arizona, and North Dakota, and New Mexico. We're going to California, and Texas, and New York. We're going to South Dakota, and Oregon, and Washington, and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House.
Typical white person.
When the liberals are out of power, they are funny and hilarious. When they're in power, they're dangerous.
During my service in the United States Congress, I took the initiative in creating the Internet.
As always, we maintain plausible denial.
And now, the Axis of Stevil Show with your host, Steve Perry.
And we are taking a little break from the usual political conversation. We have a very special guest with us tonight. We have Lionel Fanthorpe. And Lionel is a paranormal researcher. He spent the last 30 years studying unsolved mysteries. And he's going to be with us tonight to talk about it. You are, of course, listening to the Axis of Stevil Show with your host, Steve Perry. Lionel Fanthorpe, are you with us?
I'm right here, Steve.
It is a pleasure to have you on the show. I have heard you on Coast to Coast AM several times. I've followed a lot of your work, and it is just an absolute pleasure to have you here with us tonight for us and this morning for you.
Yep, it's 2 a.m. here in Cardiff in Wales in the UK. And it's a terrific pleasure for me to be one of your guests, and thank you again for the invitation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And we're here, of course, talking in part about your book, The Secrets of the World's Undiscovered Treasures, which is a new book that you put out. But you spent, I believe, the last 30 years researching different unsolved mysteries around the world. Yeah,
it went back to a time when I was living over in East Anglia on the other side of the UK, and I was lecturing for Cambridge University's extramural board. That's classes that meet in the evenings. And one of the things that they asked me to do was to write and then lecture on a course on the psychology and sociology of these unexplained phenomena. And in researching them for my students, I got very keenly interested, and I've been researching them ever since.
You've got probably the best collection of paranormal stories that I have heard. It's a very impressive body of work that you have. In your new book, you research a subject that, or you discuss a subject in there that I had heard about before, and I had wondered about this one. You've also written a book, I believe, exclusively about the Oak Island treasure.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you and our listeners about the Oak Island mystery because, as you said, it is one of the highlights of the book on treasure in general and the way that treasure has been hidden and the things that are associated with it. But the Oak Island mystery first took our attention a long time ago. And we went over there to Nova Scotia, where we investigated firsthand on several occasions, and we had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the other researchers who were working there, and we were just fascinated by it. Not only wondering what was really down there, but of course the great historical question of who might have put it there. So the result of our research into the Oak Island mystery began with 3 boys of Smith, Vaughan, and McGuinness, who were in 1795 living in Nova Scotia, and they'd been given a day off from the very hard work. If you lived in Nova Scotia in 1795, you did one of 3 things, and they were all hard work. You were either a fisherman, or you were a forester, or you were a farmer. And the 3 lads, the parents had said, okay, boys, you work hard, you help us all you can, go on, have a day off while you're still young to enjoy it. And they took their boats out to Oak Island, as it was called, because of the proliferation of oak trees on the island. And as they walked through this, what was then uninhabited island, it was about 1 mile long by half a mile wide. And they came across a clearing. At the side of that clearing was an oak tree, bigger than most of the others, and with one branch severed off, lopped off short, over the center of what had clearly been a shaft that someone had dug deep into the island. What fascinated the boys was that hanging on the end of this branch, which had been cut short, there was an old ship's block and tackle, as if something very heavy had been lowered down that shaft. Well, you imagine if we were teenagers in 1795, the first thought that would have come to our minds when we made this exciting discovery was pirates. Because Mahone Bay itself, just off the coast of Chester in Nova Scotia, was named after a Mahone, which was a type of sailing ship which pirates tended to favor. So we could almost interpret the name of the area as Pirate Ship Bay. And again, they can get right inside these kids. They go home, they get their digging equipment, and they start moving the earth underneath this branch of the great oak tree. They get down several feet, and they hit a platform of oak logs. They realized that the soil they were taking out was very easy to move. It was just soft backfill, and it made them absolutely certain that this was an artificial shaft that someone, maybe pirates burying their treasure, had dug. It wasn't just a natural shaft. And when they examined the brick-hard walls of the shaft, they saw the marks of the picks and spades left, who knows how long before them, by whoever had dug that shaft. They took out the oak logs with some difficulty, expecting that that was where the treasure was. But there was nothing, just more of this loose backfill. But they didn't give up. They were tough young Nova Scotians, and they were heading for what they thought was a treasure that would mean no more hard work for them or their families. They cleared another 10 feet of the shaft, and they hit another platform of oak logs. Well, they managed to get them out, and all they found was more soft backfill. They said, this is more than 3 guys can handle. We're going to have to get a proper expedition organized. And it took a while to do that, but they did get an expedition organized. There were fathers, uncles, granddads, anybody who could spare a day or 2 off work. And this adult expedition, with horses and other equipment, managed to get down to a depth of over 100 feet. And at the 100-foot level, the men at the bottom called up the shaft. It's getting damp. We don't like this. It's getting wet. And the guys at the top said, you boys better come up fast in case there's problems for you down there with the water. So they came out. It was then turning dark. It was the end of the day's dig. First light in the morning, back they all came to have a look, and to their horror, the pit was 60 feet deep in water, and it was rising and falling slowly as the tide moved it. And they realized that whoever had dug that shaft and hidden something of immense value down there had also designed it so that if anybody attempted to get through it, to get down and find whatever was hidden, concealed, protected down there, they would trigger off 2 flood tunnels. Well, all through the 1800s and the 1900s, one expedition after another tried and failed, beaten every time by the floodwater. They discovered that the original builders of the Money Pit had made 2 flood tunnels from an artificial beach at Smith's Cove, part of the Oak Island coastline. And Patricia and I have, in the course of our explorations, we've actually stood on that artificial beach and marveled at the guys who made it so that their flood tunnels would not silt up with the natural sand of the beach. They'd put boulders and they'd put kind of very coarse marine grasses underneath so that they would trap any sand but let the water through. Now, a man we met there who became a great friend of ours, now in his 80s and as far as we know still working there, was the great Dan Blankenship. Now, Dan was an American war hero, and at the end of World War II, he was driving a Jeep full of vital ammunition across a bridge to a party of very, very tough American infantrymen on the other side of the bridge who were being pressed hard by the Germans. Dan knew that he had to get that ammunition to them, and with bullets raking through the windscreen, he was leaning over at 90 degrees and driving the Jeep with one hand across that shell-shattered bridge, and he got to the men at the other side. And once they'd got their ammunition, well, that turned the battle in that area. So he was a man we were very proud to meet, and he put that same courage, determination, and devotion into looking for the Oak Island treasure at the bottom of the shaft. And his own life was in danger again. On one occasion, he had dug another shaft parallel to the one that had been investigated 200 years earlier by these 3 teenage boys.